I wandered aimlessly through the streets that day, unsure of where my feet were even taking me. The autumn air was crisp and sharp, biting at my cheeks as if reminding me I was still alive, though inside I felt anything but. I passed bakeries filled with laughter, children tugging at their parents' hands, families gathering around steaming cups of coffee. Each sight was another twist of the knife in my chest. Eventually, I found myself on a worn park bench, the kind my wife and I used to sit on when life was simpler and our children were still small. From that very spot, I watched as a little girl ran up to her grandfather, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck as she handed him a hand-drawn card. His eyes lit up with joy as he read the crooked words written in crayon. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." He kissed her forehead and they laughed together. A sound so pure it seemed to warm the entire park. I turned my face away quickly, blinking hard as tears stung my eyes. Why couldn't my own children see me like that? Why was I invisible to the very people I sacrificed everything for? Once they couldn't go a day without my guidance, my love, my presence. Now they barely tolerated my existence. To them, I wasn't a father. I was a shadow. The sun dipped lower in the sky and the world around me grew colder. I stood and walked home, each step heavier than the last. That night, my dinner was nothing more than a stale piece of bread and a cup of lukewarm tea. I sat at the table, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. No laughter, no conversation, no one to ask how my day had been, just me, and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. I glanced at my phone, hoping, just hoping, that there might be a message. A call, even a simple, "Happy birthday, Dad." But the screen stayed black, no notifications, no reminders that I mattered. I placed it face down, the emptiness inside me echoing louder than the silence around me. When I finally crawled into bed, I lay staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, with a pain I couldn't shake. Memories of birthdays past flooded in, the way my late wife used to bake me a cake, the way the kids once sang off-key just to make me laugh, the way I felt loved. Now all of that was gone, replaced by mockery, indifference, and silence. "Maybe this is how it ends," I whispered into the darkness. My voice cracked, the words catching in my throat. I felt smaller than ever before, as though the world had shrunk around me and pushed me out of it. My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. I didn't want them to win, not even in my own home. But as I lay there, broken and sleepless, I had no idea what the morning would bring. No idea that the very people who dismissed me as worthless would come running back, desperate for the one thing only I could give. No idea that the storm was already on its way, and it was about to change everything. That afternoon, I walked into Mark's home. The atmosphere hit me the moment I stepped inside, thick, heavy, almost suffocating. Papers were scattered across the dining table like fallen leaves. Half-drunk coffee cups sat untouched, and the air buzzed with a nervous tension. Emily was the first to notice me. She shot up from her chair, her eyes wide, her voice shaky. "Dad!" she blurted, rushing toward me. "The bank is threatening to take the property. They need your signature. Please, sign these documents and save us." Her words landed like a hammer to the chest. My hands trembled as I picked up the papers, but as my eyes scanned the documents, my heart froze. The home they were so desperate to protect was mine. The very home I built with my late wife, brick by brick. When our love was still young and unshakable, memories flashed before my eyes, painting the walls together, celebrating our first Christmas by the fireplace, watching the kids tear through wrapping paper on birthdays, filling the halls with laughter. This house wasn't just wood and stone. It was the foundation of our lives. And now, they wanted me to sign it away. I looked up, my voice quieter than I intended, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Mark's eyes darted to the floor. His shoulders sagged. We didn't want to bother you. Didn't want to bother me." Or, pause, slow. The same children who mocked me at my birthday party. The same children who called me worthless at my age. Now, when they were desperate, suddenly my signature was priceless. Suddenly, my age didn't matter anymore. I placed the papers back on the table slowly, deliberately, watching their faces pale with every second. The silence stretched like a rope ready to snap. Finally, I said in a steady, measured voice, I'll think about it. Their faces dropped instantly, fear, anger, and disbelief colliding all at once. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. Mark clenched his jaw, gripping the edge of the table. They had expected me to fold, to obey, to save them without hesitation. But for the first time in years, I held the power, and as I turned to leave, the weight of their stares burning into my back, one thought echoed in my mind. Yesterday, I was worthless to them. Today, I'm the only one who can save them. Little did they know, I wasn't about to make this decision lightly. That evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, there was a knock at my door. A sharp, deliberate knock, not rushed, not hesitant. I opened it to see Mr. Anderson, my old friend and trusted lawyer, standing tall with a leather folder tucked under his arm. His face was calm, unreadable, but his presence alone carried weight. Ah, perfect timing, I said, stepping aside to let him in. Mark and Emily, who had followed me home, shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Mr. Anderson entered the room. I watched their expressions closely, their brows furrowing, their posture stiffening. Something inside them sensed this was not going to be the conversation they expected. "Kids," I said slowly, my voice steady but firm, "meet the man who helped me prepare my will." Their eyes widened instantly, panic flickering across their faces. Emily's voice trembled as she stammered, "Your will?" Mr. Anderson adjusted his glasses, then gave a single, solemn nod. "Yes, your father updated it just last week." He opened the folder and pulled out neatly stacked papers. "This home, along with his savings and assets, are no longer in your names." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Emily gasped audibly, clutching the arm of her chair. Mark's face went pale, drained of all color. For a long moment, silence swallowed the room, so heavy you could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I let the silence stretch, because silence can sometimes hurt more than words. Finally, I looked straight into their eyes and said with a firmness I hadn't used in years, "That's right. I've decided to leave everything to charity, to children who actually value love, not those who throw it away." Emily's lips trembled, her eyes glassy with tears. Mark's jaw clenched so tightly I could see the vein in his temple pulse. Their confidence, their arrogance, the same smugness they wore when they mocked me at the party, all of it melted away in an instant. Now they were speechless, powerless, desperate. The room froze in silence, the weight of my words pressing down on them like a hammer. For the first time, my children truly understood what it meant to lose me, not just my presence, but everything I had ever built, every sacrifice I had ever made. And I sat there, calm and unshaken, knowing that for once, they were the ones who needed me desperately. "Dad, no." Emily suddenly cried out, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. She rushed toward me, her hands trembling as they clutched at my arm. "We made a mistake. Please, don't do this. We didn't mean what we said at the party. We were wrong, so wrong." Her sobs echoed in the room, raw and desperate. Mark, usually the stoic one, lowered his head. His voice cracked as he spoke, heavy with shame. "You're right, Dad. We were cruel. We thought we didn't need you. We let our pride blind us. But the truth is, we do need you. More than we ever admitted. Please, forgive us." I looked at them long and hard, letting the silence grow heavy between us. Their faces, once so dismissive, so arrogant when they mocked me in front of others, were now pale and broken. For a moment, my heart ached. Memories flooded back. Mark as a little boy running to me with his first school trophy. Emily holding my hand when she was scared of thunderstorms. A part of me wanted to pull them close, to erase all the pain, but I couldn't let years of neglect and disrespect vanish in a single plea. I drew a slow breath, my voice steady, but carrying the weight of a lifetime. "Respect isn't begged for in one day," I said quietly, each word sharp as a blade. "It's earned every day. If you want forgiveness," I paused, locking eyes with each of them, "show me through your actions. Show me that you value me not just when you're desperate, not just when your world is falling apart, but every day as family should." Emily's sobs grew softer, her shoulders shaking as she nodded. Mark's eyes glistened, his pride shattered. For once, there were no excuses, no clever words, just guilt, just silence, and as I stood there unwavering, the balance had shifted. The children who once mocked me as worthless at my age, were now the ones begging desperately for my worth. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, my home didn't feel like a place of silence anymore. Mark and Emily began to visit, not with desperate faces holding papers for me to sign, not with excuses or half-hearted conversations, but simply to be with me. They came with stories, laughter, and even quiet moments where no words were needed. We shared meals around the same table where once they had looked at their phones instead of me. Now their eyes met mine. And in those small, simple gestures, I could see something I hadn't seen in a long time: respect. It wasn't easy at first. The guilt still hung over them, and I could sense how hard they were trying. But slowly, piece by piece, they began to rebuild the bridge they had once burned. Mark asked me about my old carpentry days, wanting to hear stories of how I built our home. Emily sat beside me, listening intently as I told her about her mother, the woman who once filled these walls with laughter. For the first time, my children weren't just present. They were connected. Then, one quiet evening, Emily walked into the room holding a small cake. She placed it gently on the table in front of me. Written in shaky icing were the words, "Happy belated 70th birthday, Dad." Her voice was soft, almost breaking as she whispered, "I'm sorry it's late, but I want you to know I'll never forget again." My throat tightened as tears filled my eyes. But it wasn't the cake that made me cry. It was the sincerity in her eyes, the way her hand shook as she lit the candles, the way Mark stood beside her, silently nodding with a look of genuine remorse. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not as a burden, not as someone worthless with age, as they had once mocked me at the party, but as a father, as the man who had built their foundation, both the walls around us and the life they lived. And that night, as the candles flickered and the room filled with a fragile kind of warmth, I realized something. Sometimes life forces us to teach the ones we love the hardest lesson of all. Never take someone for granted. Because the moment you do, you risk losing them forever. So to anyone watching this who has ever felt invisible in their own family, remember this: your age does not define your worth. Your love, your sacrifices, your wisdom, that is priceless. And those who fail to see it today may one day be the very ones begging for it tomorrow. The days that followed felt like I was living in an entirely new house. The walls hadn't changed, the old wooden furniture was the same, but the air felt different, lighter, warmer. Emily began stopping by every morning on her way to work. She always carried a paper cup in her hand, and without fail, she'd set it down in front of me with a soft smile. "Black, no sugar, just how you like it, Dad." That tiny gesture, after years of neglect, felt like a miracle. Mark, too, seemed like a different man. The son who once barely spoke to me unless he needed money was now spending his weekends at my place. He mowed the lawn without being asked, fixed the faucet that had been dripping for months, and even sat beside me in the evenings, watching the old movies we used to enjoy when he was just a boy. Sometimes, during those moments, I caught myself glancing at him and wondering, is this real? For the first time in years, I felt the echoes of what family should be. Laughter at the dinner table, conversations that lasted longer than a few minutes, a sense of togetherness I thought I had lost forever. And yet, deep inside, another voice whispered, "Don't be fooled. This might be an act. They've disappointed you before. They mocked you, called you worthless at your age. What if this is just another game?" That doubt clung to me like a shadow. Every smile they gave, every kind word, every thoughtful gesture, I wanted to accept it, to let my guard down and believe my children had finally realized my worth. But part of me was afraid that once again they only saw me as useful, not as loved, and so as the days passed, I watched them carefully. Every cup of coffee, every repaired faucet, every late-night movie was a test in my mind. Were they truly changing? Or was this just another way to get something from me? One evening, about a week later, I decided it was time to test them. The kindness, the morning coffees, the repairs around the house, they all seemed too perfect, too timed. So, as we sat at the dinner table, the glow of the chandelier flickering above us, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands across my chest, and said casually, I've been thinking of making another change to my will. The effect was immediate. The clinking of silverware stopped. Mark froze with a plate in his hands, his knuckles turning white around the edge of the porcelain. Emily, halfway through a bite, set her fork down slowly, her face draining of color. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. Emily broke the silence first. "What kind of change?" Her voice was steady, but I caught the tremor underneath. I studied them carefully, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them squirm. "Well," I said finally, "the charities I picked are wonderful, of course, but perhaps I'll add something else. A scholarship fund in your mother's name. Something to help young single mothers who are struggling to raise children." "Mary would have liked that, don't you think?" Mark nodded quickly, almost too quickly. His jaw tightened, and his eyes darted toward his sister. That's a great idea, Dad. A really great idea." Emily forced a smile, though her lips quivered. "Yes, Mom would have loved that." But their voices said one thing, and their eyes told me another story. Behind the thin layer of agreement, I saw fear, pure, sharp fear. The kind of fear people have when they realize something they counted on might slip through their fingers. In that moment, the truth hit me. They weren't here because they had rediscovered their love for me. They weren't mowing lawns or bringing me coffee because they wanted to honor me. They were terrified that their inheritance, the life they thought they had secured for themselves, might vanish. And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt in control. That night I sat at my desk staring at the stack of documents Mr. Anderson had left behind. My pen hovered over the page, but I didn't sign. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed his number. "Don't file the new will just yet," I told him. "Let's give it some time," he hesitated. "Are you sure?" "The changes are solid." "I'm sure," I replied. "I want to see what my children value more, the inheritance or their father." The next weekend, Emily invited me to her house for dinner. She had gone all out: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, apple pie. "Dad," she said softly, "I want you to know, you mean the world to me. I haven't said it enough, but I'm grateful for everything you've done." Her words were sweet. Too sweet, like sugar covering something sour. Halfway through dinner, I tested her again. "You know, Mr. Anderson told me there's a retirement community near the coast. Peaceful, sunny, with people my age. Maybe I should move there." Her fork clattered onto her plate. "Move? But why?" "Because sometimes," I said with a sigh, "it feels like I don't belong here anymore." Her eyes darted nervously. "Dad, of course you belong. You can't just leave." But she didn't say "because we love you." She said it because she couldn't imagine life without my presence, my money, my security. And I noticed that Mark, on the other hand, tried a different approach. One afternoon, he asked if I'd help him fix his car. We spent hours under the hood, talking about life, about Mary, about the mistakes he'd made. For a brief fleeting moment, I almost believed him. Until, as we wiped our hands on rags, he muttered, "So, when do you think you'll finalize those will changes?" The hope I felt vanished like smoke. The breaking point came a week later. I overheard Emily and Mark in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. Their voices were hushed, urgent. "If he gives it all to charity, we're screwed," Emily whispered. Mark hissed back, "We can't let that happen. We just have to keep him happy until it's signed back in our favor. Then we'll figure the rest out." My heart shattered. So it was true. Their kindness, their sudden affection, it was all a performance, a play. And I was the fool they thought couldn't see through it. The next morning, I made my decision. I called Mr. Anderson. "It's time. File the documents. Everything goes to the charities." "Every last cent," he hesitated. "Are you sure?" "This is final." "I've never been more sure of anything," I said firmly. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The fallout was explosive. When Mark and Emily found out, they stormed into my house. "You can't do this to us." Emily shouted, her face twisted with anger. Mark slammed his fist on the table. "We're your family. That money is ours by right." I stood tall, my voice calm but unyielding. "No, it was never yours. It was mine. Mine to give, mine to withhold. And I choose to give it to people who will never mock me, never call me worthless, never use me. People who will be grateful, their faces contorted in fury, but beneath it I saw something else. Fear. Not of losing the money, but of losing the father they had taken for granted. "Dad," Emily said through gritted teeth, "if you do this, you'll regret it." I shook my head slowly. "No. The only thing I regret is believing for so many years that my worth depended on how much I gave you. My worth is more than money, more than property. My worth is who I am, and if you can't see that, then maybe losing me is the lesson you need." As they stormed out, slamming the door behind them, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just a father desperate for scraps of love. I was a man who had taken control of his own dignity. And whether my children learned from this or not didn't matter anymore, because I finally remembered my worth.